this is the best air purifier you can buy.
Well, the CR box does have some good qualities for sure. And on the highest speed the fan will go, it is a legit filtration solution for particles, as on high speed, it can filter particles very rapidly. However, it is definitely not the best air purifier you can buy, like Abby states at the beginning of this video. That just isn't a true statement, okay? So this is my critique of the Ratings.com's recent video titled, "The Best Air Purifier is a $150 DIY Option." The folks at Ratings.com tested 26 different air purifiers, and one of them was a Corsi-Rosenthal Box, and they declared the CR Box to be the best air purifier solution out of all of them. But if we look at the testing results more closely, we can clearly see that 4 or 5 of the other air purifiers actually beat the CR Box in particle filtration. But first, let's go over some other important issues in this video before we get to the actual testing results. Number 1, carbon. At about 2 minutes and 50 seconds into the video, they state that most air purifiers don't have enough carbon to do a good job for VOCs, and I totally agree. Most don't. However, some do. For example, the Air Pura air purifiers have 8 pounds, 18 pounds, and 26 pounds of carbon in their solutions, and they do a really good job with VOCs, chemicals, and odor removal. Some of the Austin Air units have 15 pounds of carbon in their solutions, and the IQ Air GC has 12 pounds of carbon. So some air purifiers do exist with enough carbon to absorb VOCs, chemicals, and odors for several months. I have successfully consulted with many people through the years on VOCs, chemicals, and odor issues and carbon-based solutions. So I don't want consumers to think that this type of solution does not exist in the market. It absolutely, positively does exist, and some of these solutions do a great job at filtering VOCs, chemicals, and odors. That said, none of the 26 air purifiers that Ratings.com tested in this video would be considered good carbon solutions. Now, the Ratings.com folks say they didn't test for VOCs because they don't have the equipment for it, and that is totally cool. After all, it's very hard and very expensive to accurately test for VOCs and chemical absorption. It is not a simple process to pull off. So I totally agree with their decision to not stray into the carbon issue on the testing side. All that said, there are some really good carbon air purification solutions on the market that they are just not aware of. Number 2, critique of the testing procedures and methodologies in this video. Air purifier tests that we see online are typically conducted by people who I would consider to be amateur testers. They are amateur testers, and their test results can oftentimes be inaccurate, and/or they may draw some incorrect conclusions from their own test results because they are not really air quality experts, so to speak. Now, actual professional expert third-party testing labs do exist, and they use more expensive, more precise testing equipment and specialized software. They have years and even decades of air quality testing experience. They get paid thousands of dollars by companies, even Fortune 500 companies, to do testing on their products, and they are conducting air quality tests on a daily basis, week in and week out for years on end. And therefore, they would be considered experts in the air quality testing industry. Now, Ratings.com and most all other YouTube channels and blogs that we see online are not experts at testing air quality equipment. They are amateurs, but many will try their best, and there are still a lot of things we can learn from their testing results, even if their testing methodologies are not perfect. So before we get into the results, here are just a few things about the Ratings.com testing environment and methodologies that I feel are less than perfect without going into too much detail. Number 1, the ceiling in the testing chamber looks like it may be about 12 to 15 feet tall, and the opening of the tube that collects the air to be tested is way up the wall towards the ceiling. It looks like the opening of the tube may be 9 to 10 feet up in the air. It's hard to tell exactly. Either way, this testing environment will probably favor and provide better results for air purifiers that push the clean air out the top of the units. as opposed to air purifiers that push the clean air out the sides of the units. For example, like an Air Pura or an IQ Health Pro Plus, right? Since the tube is collecting the air towards the ceiling, it is basically doing a test for the air quality way up towards the top of the ceiling of the room. Number 2, there is only one air quality monitor being used. So usually, I believe there would be more testing devices in the chamber at different locations for more professional tests. The folks at ratings.com use a Fluke 985 particle counter, and it retails for about $6,000 on Amazon. So I do believe they are really trying to do a good job, and they are trying to provide people with good information. So I think their hearts are in the right place, but usually multiple testers in different locations will be utilized in a professional testing environment. Number 3, as mentioned before, they don't test for VOCs or chemicals, which is fine as long as everyone knows they are only testing for particle concentrations. Obviously, some environments will require an air purification solution with a lot of carbon, and none of these 26 units tested would be considered strong for a VOC/chemical intensive environment, with the exception of maybe the Dyson unit, which is marketed as being able to do a good job at filtering formaldehyde. Number 4, they only test down to 0.3 microns, and that only accounts for less than 10% of all the particles in the air we breathe. So over 90% of the particles in the air we breathe are ultrafine particles, and they are also the most dangerous to us. A lot of research has linked ultrafine particles to cancer, Alzheimer's, heart attacks, autism, erectile dysfunction, and many, many other health issues as well. I made a video on this issue in the past. So most of the amateur tests will not be able to accurately test for ultrafine particles. This isn't the end of the world. It doesn't mean this test doesn't have any value, as we can still try to learn from most every test we see and analyze. Number 5, they only test the filters while they are brand new and clean, which is the same issue with the CADR ratings. And I mentioned this in my CADR video as well. The CADR ratings are based on tests which are only conducted on brand new filters, and they only run them for 20 minutes. But this isn't just an issue for amateur testers, and it's not just an issue for the CADR rating tests either. This issue is also true for expert testers at third-party labs as well. The vast majority of test results we see are taken from new units utilizing clean filters. So this is not an easily remedied issue. You see, the filtration efficiency of air purifiers will change and tend to decrease over time as the filters get dirtier. For example, here is a chart of testing results from some CR boxes that Jim Rosenthal tested a few years ago. This chart shows the testing results of 5 CR boxes with MERV 13 filters in them that he tested over time. By the way, the results in this chart are based on amateur testing techniques as well, as these results are all from different CR boxes that were in different rooms, and one of them had larger filters than the other CR boxes, and one of them used a different fan than the other CR boxes, and some of the units were raised off the ground, and some were not. So it was amateur testing techniques which provided these numbers. But again, we can still analyze the results with that in mind, right? No single test will tell us everything we need to know about an air purifier and how well it will perform over the next 2, 4, 6, or 12 months in our environment. We'd need multiple tests to be conducted at different times, focusing on different performance metrics. It would become very difficult and costly to perform all these tests accurately for all the units on the market, as you would imagine. So here are the Rosenthal CR box testing results in this chart. That's 0.3 microns. That's 0.5 microns, and down at the bottom, we see the larger 10 microns. So on day 1, the CR box he tested filtered 50% concentrations of the 0.3 micron particles. But on day 300, one of his CR boxes filtered only 36% of the 0.3 micron size particles. And again, HEPA is 99.97% at 0.3 microns, so it's obviously not getting even close to HEPA levels of filtration. And we see over here, down the chart, at the larger 10 micron particle sizes, the CR boxes performed extremely well according to this particular test over a couple of months. And one of the CR boxes hit 100% filtration for 10 micron particle concentrations, even at 180 days, which is impressive in my opinion. So the CR boxes filtered better for the larger particles than the smaller ones, as we can clearly see, right? because when we go to the smaller 2.5 micron particle sizes, the units are less efficient at filtering over time. The first CR box hit 100% on day 1, the second CR box hit 93.1% on day 60, the third CR box hit 88% on day 120, and so on. The performance decreased over time. And then we see that the smaller 1 micron particle percentages of filtration are less than the larger 2.5 micron size particles. We got 72% on day 1 and 54% on day 120, and so on. And we also see that the smaller 0.5 micron size particle filtration is less efficient than the larger 1 micron values, 67% on day 1 and 49% on day 120 and 42% on day 300. And then we get back to the 0.3 micron particle size filtration percentages, which are the smallest on the chart, and we see 50% on day 1 and 36% on day 300. So in general, the CR boxes filtered less efficiently over the weeks and months as the filters got dirtier. And the CR boxes filter the larger particulates better than the smaller ones. We can see that very clearly right here, right? And these are extremely important points that we will be discussing and analyzing later. Number 6. Ratings.com only tested the units for an hour. And as we just saw with the Rosenthal testing numbers, the filtering capability of air purifiers is dynamic over time. MERV and HEPA filters will tend to filter less effectively over time. This is just how it works in the real world. For the vast majority of consumer air filtration solutions, the airflow will tend to decrease as the filters get more clogged with debris. And also, more dirty air will tend to escape around the filters as well. So a 1-hour test on an air purifier or filter is just a snapshot of how a filter or unit performs, and that particular test, with those particular testing methodologies, expert or amateur, and at that specific point in time, on the specific fan speed that they ran the unit on. And these Ratings.com tests were performed with brand new units using brand new clean filters as well. But a short hour-long test does not tell us how well the filters or units will perform in 30 days, 60 days, or 100 days in our home or office in the real world, as the Rosenthal results just showed us. And of note, Unit A may beat Unit B in a 1-hour-long test with clean filters. However, after 8 weeks of use in a real-world environment, Unit B with used filters may actually filter better than Unit A with used filters for a variety of reasons we won't go into right now. Number 7. Also, they put the air purifiers in the corner of the room about an inch from the wall. As they said, they think most users will put the units in the corners of their rooms, but I don't think this is 100% correct for most air purifier owners. So it's just something for us to take into consideration when analyzing the testing environment and results. Number 8. They did test 26 different units, but they are mostly lower end solutions, and they didn't test the higher level brands like IQ Air, Air Pura, Austin Air, Aris, etc. So consumers need to realize that the test results are not indicative of the entire HEPA air purification industry. They mostly only tested some of the generally lesser expensive units in the market. So we have to take this into consideration as well, of course. We can't say the winner out of these particular 26 units is actually the best filtering solution on the market, because there are many other options available out there that they did not test. And number 9, it should also be noted that they used a CR box with 4 20 by 25 inch Filtrete MERV 13 filters in the test. So this CR box uses larger filters. In fact, they are 25% larger than the CR boxes that most people will make, which use the 20 by 20 inch filters. Like the picture examples that are shown on Wikipedia for CR boxes, those are 20 by 20 inch MERV 13 filters. The CR box used in this test uses filters that are 25% larger. So that may make it perform better than the probably more popular 20 by 20 inch CR boxes. So we shouldn't expect the same filtration results with the CR boxes that are made with the smaller 20 by 20 inch filters. And we can see here in Rosenthal's chart, the CR boxes tested both used 5 MERV 13 filters instead of 4, like the other CR boxes in day 1, month 2, and month 4. Plus, they used larger MERV 13 filters on the CR boxes in month 6 and 10 as well. As we can see on the chart, there was actually an improvement for the filtration of 1 and 0.5 micron sized particles for the 6th month. it went from 49% to 51%, and from 54% to 74%. So the larger MERV 13 filters seem to have filtered better. So we have to keep that in mind for the ratings.com test as well, as the CR box they tested has larger filters. At any rate, we'll stop there on some of the issues of the test itself. So those are just 9 issues off the top of my head in regards to the testing environment and methodologies that may cause some accuracy issues. The fact is, almost no testing environment is going to be perfect. And these guys really did seem to try their best with the resources that they had available. For example, in the video, they talked about how they had some issues with the smoke machine that had to be resolved, etc. So I do think they're trying to do a good job and create accurate results. It's just not easy at all to accurately test air purifiers consistently. Many variables are involved. It is a lot more difficult than most folks would ever imagine. Number 3, the test results. So now let's discuss the ratings.com test results for these 26 units. So they have some really nice performance graphs we can navigate, and here's what we see. This graph shows the filtration results of the CR box compared to the Dyson Big and Quiet Formaldehyde BP06. Here are the 2 air purifiers up here, and here are the 3 different data points. 0.3 micron particle concentrations, which are the smallest, 0.5 micron particle concentrations, and 1.0 micron particle concentrations, which are the largest. This is the x-axis, and it shows the minutes from 0 to 60 in 5-minute increments. And all the values on the x-axis are equally spaced. Now, this is the y-axis, and it shows us the particle concentrations from 0 to 500,000. But as we can see, the numbers on this side are not spaced in a uniform manner. The number range is too high to fit evenly on the y-axis. So the distance between 0 to 5 is about 5 times greater than the distance between 5 to 10. Here is 0 to 5, and here is 5 to 10. 5 to 10 is very close together in comparison. And the distance between 10 to 100 is about the same distance as it is from 0 to 5. Here's the distance from 10 to 100, and here's the distance from 0 to 5 again. And the distance from 50 to 100 is very close together, so it's about the same distance as 5 to 10, and so on. So this type of erratic spacing on the y-axis of a graph will tend to distort the data from a visual perspective. The values at the bottom of the graph, in particular from 0 to 5, will tend to have longer lines, in fact, much longer lines than some of the other values above this region, as we can see here. See how long these lines are down at the bottom of the graph? This range right here is mostly 1 and 0.5 micron size particle readings. But the erratic spacing of the values on the y-axis over-accentuate the 0.5 and 1 micron readings when you compare them to the 0.3 micron readings of the rest of the graph. This area right here is mostly 0.3 micron sized particle results. But from here to here on the y-axis is 0 to 10, while from here to here it is 10 to 100, basically 10 times more, so the distances are distorted. But there is actually a greater disparity in the performance of the units in the 0.3 micron lines, even though they are shorter on these charts. They are just crunched together in comparison to the 1 and 0.5 micron line readings. These lines right here would actually be longer than the lines below if the values of the y-axis were evenly distributed. Now, these 3 lines here represent the CR box's ability to filter 1, 0.5, and 0.3 micron particle concentrations. And these 3 lines right here represent the Dyson BP06's ability to filter 1, 0.5, and 0.3 micron particle concentrations as well. So we can see the CR box filters the different concentrations quicker, right? The more airflow is providing a faster drop in the overall particle concentrations in the room. At 15 minutes, the 3 lines for the CR box are lower than the Dyson's 3 lines. At 15 minutes, here are the CR box's values, and here are the Dyson BP06's values. So this CR box is proficient at filtering particles in the air faster than most HEPA air purifiers, especially larger particles, due to its stronger airflow. And that is really a strength of a CR box with a strong fan, the strong airflow. However, when we move ahead to minute 35 in the test results, we see the two units are filtering more closely to each other, and the Dyson unit actually catches up to the CR box. Now let's look at the data for the individual particle concentrations. Here are the two values between the CR box and the Dyson BP06 for 1 micron particle concentrations. We can see the CR box filters the 1 micron particle concentrations initially faster. However, at about 35 minutes, the Dyson catches up and filters the 1 micron particle concentrations in a similar manner for the remainder of the test. For the final 25 minutes of the test, the CR box has a 0.5 average value for the filtration of 1 micron particle concentrations, and the Dyson has a 0.61 average value for the 1 micron particle concentrations. So, for the final 25 minutes of the test, the CR box's filtration value for the 1 micron particle concentrations is 18% lower than the Dyson BP06, but they are very close in performance. It is pretty close, as we're talking about 0.5 versus 0.61. Now, if we do the same thing for the Honeywell HPA 300, the Levoit Core 600S, and the Levoit Vital 200S, for the last 25 minutes of the test, we get these numbers. The HPA 300 has a 2.39 average filtration score for 1 micron particle concentrations, so the CR box's average score is 79% lower. Now, after 35 minutes, the Core 600S has a 0.44 average filtration score for 1 micron particle concentrations, so the 600S actually filtered 1 micron sized particles 12% better than the CR box over the last 25 minutes of their test. That is this area right here. And then we have the Vital 200S, which has a 1.36 average filtration score for the last 25 minutes. So the CR box's average score is 63% lower. So the CR box filters better than 3 of these 4 air purifiers for the larger 1 micron sized particles throughout the test. But the numbers do get much closer after about the 35-minute mark, and the Levoit Core 600S actually filters the 1 micron sized particles better than the CR box for the final 25 minutes of the test. Now, when we move on to the smaller, more dangerous particles, we see this trend continue and actually favor the 4 HEPA air purifiers even more. Here is the graph of the CR box and the Dyson BP06 unit for 0.5 micron particle concentrations. This line represents the CR box's values, and this line represents the Dyson's values. And as we can see, at about 35 minutes, the Dyson starts to filter the 0.5 micron particle concentrations better than the CR box. The CR box is only initially filtering better in the beginning due to its superior airflow. But then the Dyson catches up to it, and the Dyson is actually superior at filtering the 0.5 micron particle concentrations for about the last half of the test. And here are what the numbers look like over the last 25 minutes. The CR box has a 6.81 average filtration value, and the Dyson has a 3.22 average filtration value. So the Dyson actually filters 53% lower for the 0.5 micron particle concentrations on average, again, for the last 25 minutes of the test. Here are what the last 25 minutes of values actually look like without the distorted y-axis. We can clearly see the Dyson filters better. Now, if we analyze the other 3 HEPA air purifiers, we find that they also filter 0.5 micron sized particles better than the CR box for the last 25 minutes of the test as well. Here is a graph of the comparison between the CR box and the Honeywell HPA 300 for 0.5 micron particle concentrations. Right here at about 35 minutes, again, we can see the HPA 300 catches up with the CR box, just like the Dyson did. And here's what the last 25 minutes of this graph looks like without the distorted axis. The HPA 300 has an average 0.5 micron particle concentration of 6.33, so the average reading is 7% less than the CR box for the last 25 minutes. It was close, but the HPA 300 did filter better. Next up is the Levoit Core 600S. We can see on the graph that the Core 600S, after 35 minutes, just like the Dyson and the HPA 300, it starts to filter the 0.5 micron particle concentrations better than the CR box as well. And here's what the graph looks like without the distorted y-axis. The Core 600S has an average 0.5 micron particle concentration of 3.11 over the last 25 minutes of the test, so it registers 54% lower values on average than the CR box. So just like the Dyson and the HPA 300, the Core 600 also catches up to the CR box and outperforms it over the last 25 minutes of the test for 0.5 micron concentrations. Now, onto the Levoit Vital 200S. We can see on the graph that the Vital 200S, after 35 minutes, just like the Dyson, the HPA 300, and the Corsi-600S, it starts to filter the 0.5 micron concentrations better than the CR box as well. And here is what the graph looks like without the distorted y-axis. The Vital 200S has an average 0.5 micron particle concentration of 3.25 over the last 25 minutes of the test, so it registers 52% lower values than the CR box. Again, just like the Dyson, the HPA 300, and the Corsi-600S, the Vital 200S also catches up to the CR box and outperforms it over the last 25 minutes of the test for 0.5 micron concentrations. So the CR box only filters 0.5 micron concentrations better than these 4 units for the first 30 or 35 minutes of the test. But after that time frame, all 4 of these units filter better. But wait, there's more. Next, let's take a look at how the units compare. Next, let's take a look at how the units compare with the smaller 0.3 micron particle concentrations. Here's the graph for the CR box and the Dyson BP06 for 0.3 micron particle concentrations. And we can see at about 35 minutes, the Dyson starts to filter the 0.3 micron particle concentrations better than the CR box. The CR box is only performing better in the beginning due to its superior airflow. But then the Dyson catches up to it. The Dyson is actually superior at filtering the 0.3 micron particle concentrations for the last half of the test. And here's what this graph looks like without the distorted y-axis. The CR box has an average of 47.15 0.3 micron particle concentrations, and the Dyson has an average 0.3 micron particle concentration of 31.31 over the last 25 minutes of the test. So the Dyson registers 34% lower values than the CR box. So the Dyson is filtering the smaller 0.3 micron sized particles better than the CR box for the last half of the test. And here is a graph of the comparison between the CR box and the Honeywell HPA 300 for 0.3 micron particle concentrations. Again, right here at about 35 minutes, we can see the HPA 300 starts to filter better for the final 25 minutes of the test, just like the Dyson. And here's what the graph looks like without the distorted y-axis. The HPA 300 has an average 0.3 micron particle concentration of 32.47, so the average reading is 32% lower than the CR box for the last 25 minutes. Next up is the Levoit Corsi-600S. We can see on the graph that the Corsi-600S, after 35 minutes, just like the Dyson and the HPA 300, it starts to filter the 0.3 micron concentrations better than the CR box as well. And here's what this graph looks like without the distorted y-axis. The Corsi-600S has an average 0.3 micron particle concentration of 24.30, so the average reading is 48% lower than the CR box for the last 25 minutes. Again, filtering better for the smaller, more dangerous particles. And here is a graph of the comparison between the CR box and the Levoit Vital 200S for 0.3 micron particle concentrations as well. Right here at about 35 minutes again, we can see the Vital 200S starts to filter better for the final 25 minutes of the test, just like the Dyson, the HPA 300, and the Corsi-600S air purifiers. Actually, it looks like it's filtering better at about 32.5 minutes, but we'll just say 35 minutes. And here is what the graph looks like without the distorted y-axis. The Vital 200S has an average 0.3 micron particle concentration of 21.56, so the average reading is 54% lower than the CR box for the last 25 minutes. The CR box is typically the better filtering solution for the first 35 minutes in the room, but after 35 minutes, it is not the better filtering solution for 0.5 and 0.3 micron size concentrations. All 4 of these HEPA air purifiers beat it. And here's an interesting stat. According to the Clean HVAC company, it says that 98% of all indoor particles are less than 1 micron in size, which is consistent with other stats I've seen on this issue. So if this is true, then that is definitely a point for the 4 HEPA units that filter 0.3 and 0.5 microns better after about the 35-minute mark, because the smaller particles are much more plentiful and also more dangerous to our health than the 1 micron size particles. Like the Rosenthal test results showed, the CR boxes he constructed performed much better at filtering the larger particles and were not nearly as good for the 0.5 or 0.3 micron particle concentrations. So his testing results and the results from the ratings.com tests both support the same narrative, right? Both tests show the CR box is not filtering the smaller particles nearly as well as the larger particles. And here's another interesting thing for us to think about. Over the last 25 minutes of the test, some people would probably expect the best performing unit for 0.5 micron filtration to also be the most efficient for 0.3 micron filtration as well. But we can see this is not necessarily the case. When we look at these comparisons, it shows us that of the 5 units for the last 25 minutes of the test, the Core 600S is best at filtering 1 micron size particles, and the Core 600S is also the best at 0.5 micron particle concentrations as well. However, it is not the best at the smaller 0.3 micron particle concentrations. The Vital 200S filtered better for the 0.3 micron sized particles. Many people would automatically assume that since an air purifier filters better at 1 and 0.5 micron sized particles, that it would also be the best at filtering the smaller 0.3 micron sized particles as well. But that is not the case, as we can see. Also, for the last 25 minutes of the test, the Vital 200S was ranked 4th for filtering 1 micron sized particles and ranked only 3rd for 0.5 micron sized particles. But it actually filtered the best for 0.3 micron sized particles, the smaller and more dangerous sized particles. Also in the last 25 minutes, the CR box came in 2nd for filtering 1 micron sized particles, but it came in dead last for filtering both the 0.5 and 0.3 micron sized particles. So I want to stress that just because an air purifier tests out to filter better at one particular size particle concentration, it absolutely positively 1000% does not mean the same air purifier will filter better against the competition for all the other different sized particles, especially the smaller, more dangerous ones. Also, there is a larger disparity in the filtering results as the particles get smaller, and this also needs to be stressed. As we can see here, the first 5 dots are the 5 units average filtering results for 1 micron particle concentrations over the last 25 minutes of the test. And we can see they are all under the 3 value of the y-axis. This first dot is the CR box, but it was beaten for 1 micron average filtration by this dot, which was the Levoit 600S. But we can see all the air purifiers filtered under the value of 3 for 1 micron sized particles. So there wasn't a huge difference in their final filtering results. Now, as we go up to the next 5 dots, these are the 5 units filtering results at 0.5 microns, and we can see just a little larger disparity between the results versus the 1 micron values. It goes from 3.11 to 6.81 average filtering values. 6.81 is the average value for the CR box, which came in last for 0.5 micron filtering over the final 25 minutes of the test. And then, when we get to the smaller, more dangerous 0.3 micron filtration values, we see a much larger disparity in the performance of the air purifiers. 21.56 is the Levoit Vital 200S, which filtered the best. And way up here, we have the CR box at 47.15, which came in last again. So this graph shows more clearly how the CR box performs worse and worse after the 35-minute mark in comparison to the 4 HEPA air purifiers, as the particles get smaller and smaller. And again, smaller particles are more plentiful in the air we breathe, and they are also more dangerous to us. So one of the big questions would be, which unit filters the best for ultrafine particles? So do we think a CR box with MERV 13 filters is going to be the best filtering solution for ultrafine particles? Again, ultrafine particles are 0.1 to 0.003 microns in size, and they make up 90% of all the particles in the air we breathe, and they are the most hazardous to humans. Well, it looks like based on the results of the last half of this test by ratings.com and the results from Rosenthal's own test in his blog post, it would seem like the answer would be no. It does not seem like a CR box will filter better than one of these 4 HEPA air purifiers for ultrafine particles. It would seem like these 4 HEPA air purifiers would perform better for the smaller ultrafine particles as well, as that is where the trends are headed in the testing results. But that could get into a whole nother topic and conversation. For right now, the data from this test clearly shows the CR box only filters better than these 4 HEPA units in about the first 30 to 35 minutes. But these 4 HEPA solutions are better long-term at filtering the smaller 0.5 and 0.3 micron size particles. Many of the air purifier manufacturers say to run the air purifiers 24 hours a day. So many people don't turn off their air purifiers. I run all my air purifiers 24/7. So the CR box would only be better for me in about the first 35 minutes of the first day I turn it on. But after that, I'd much rather have one of these 4 HEPA units. At bedtime, assuming you don't run your air purifiers 24/7 and you tune your air purifier solution on right before you sleep, the CR box would only be better initially for the first 35 minutes. But if you're sleeping 8 hours a night, it would probably be better to have 7.5 hours of cleaner air from one of these 4 HEPA units than just better quality air for the first 35 minutes with the CR box. Same thing goes for an office environment as well. Also, as mentioned earlier, none of these HEPA air purifiers would be considered high level to me, and the pricing for 3 of them is pretty low. The Honeywell HPA 300 was only $126 at Walmart.com. The Dyson Big and Quiet Formaldehyde BP06 was $900 on Amazon. The Levoit Vital 200S was $190 at Walmart.com, and the Levoit 600S was $250 on Amazon. So, like I said, the majority of the units tested were not high-level solutions and not really expensive. The Dyson was one of the exceptions. So I fully expect there to be a lot more higher quality air purifiers on the market that filter better than the CR box as well, of course. Also of note, I've been calling the Levoit 200S and 600S HEPA air purifiers in this video, but they actually don't have HEPA filters. Their filters only work at a HEPA level on the lowest speed the units are run, which they call sleep mode. But for convenience sake, I've just categorized them all as having HEPA filters. Also of note, it looks like the Winix 5500-2 also filters better than the CR box after 35 minutes for 0.3 micron particle concentrations as well. So that would be 5 HEPA units filtering the 0.3 micron size particles better than the CR box after 35 minutes of the test. And the Winix 5500 only costs $146 on Amazon at the time of making this video. So again, another inexpensive HEPA solution. I didn't run the numbers for the last 25 minutes on all the air purifiers, so it is possible there may actually be more units that perform better than the CR box after 35 minutes than I have listed. Now, I currently have the CR box rated at number 17 on my best air purifiers for asthma, allergies, and dust list for 300 square foot spaces and smaller. And I currently have it listed at number 11 for the best air purifiers for a larger 1,000 square foot space. And I don't currently have the CR box listed on my ultrafine particles list rankings, as I don't currently think it does a good job at filtering ultrafine particles. You can view these lists at the link in the description of this video in the air quality guide link. So I really like this video from ratings.com and the data and graphs they provided. And I really like the personalities of the people in the video as well. They really put some effort into this whole thing. I obviously don't agree with all of their opinions on the test results. They placed way too much emphasis on the CR box's initial performance over the first half hour, because after that, some of the other units clearly beat it for particle filtration as discussed. What do you folks think about the test results and the data? Do you think it's better to have a CR box that only filters quicker and better in the first 35 minutes? Or do you think it's better to have one of the 4 HEPA air purifiers that filter the smaller particulates better for the next 23.5 hours in a day? Let me know your opinions below. Please click on this video here as I explain the differences between professional testing procedures versus amateur testing procedures and biased versus unbiased air purifier reviews. Everyone should take a look at this video so you get a better understanding of what you're looking at in some of these YouTube air purifier reviews. Thank you so much for your time and have a great day. Bye-bye.